This is Oft Off Topic, a show where two men with the attention spans of a squirrel try and fail to stay on topic with today's subject. Where will their oral meanderings take us? Well, stick around and listen, because today's Oft Off Topic is... the Black Tom Island Incident. Nate, what do you know about the Black Tom Island Incident?
Not much. I know Black Tom, but that's comic books.
Yeah.
And...
oh yeah, it is a comic book guy, isn't it, too? Huh.
Yeah, wasn't Black Tom the guy from Deadpool 2 where he's like, he called him racist? Or no, he wasn't calling him racist. He's like, Black Tom, he was a white guy. And then Cable shot him in the face, and he called, like, you killed Black Tom, you racist.
Huh. I think, wasn't Black Tom part of the Hellfire Club in the X-Men world?
I mean, that would make sense, because then they'd have the rights for Black Tom.
Yeah. Well, I'm guessing this Black Tom is probably a different Black Tom than the other
I'm
Black
sure.
Tom from the comics. They're probably unrelated.
They might be.
Although, now I'm curious. All right. So, the Black Tom incident. Are you ready to learn about it, Nate?
I am.
Okie dokie. Our story starts sometime in the late 1800s, like mid-late 1800s, 1850s, 1860s, in the waterways between New York and New Jersey. These waterways contain some very important and very busy shipping lanes, and very inconveniently in the middle of all this was a large rock that Neptune decided to put there just to be a jerk. This rock was such a hazard to sailors, and more importantly, their cargo, because it was a large sneaky rock, kind of one of those rocks that would hide in the fog and then just jump out and sink your ship randomly. It was quite well known for sinking ships, claiming lives, stealing cargo.
Stealing cargo,
yes.
Sneaking
Thief in the night. So one proven way that society has dealt with these sneaky rocks and waterways was by turning this tiny, small, hard-to-see rock into a giant, easy-to-see and hard-to-miss island. So they decided that, hey, New York, it's undergoing some massive growth at the time. We got plenty of construction refuse to deal with, old like scrap pavement and scrap steel beams and this and that. And we got to get rid of that. We got an island we could build. Let's just dump all our trash around this rock and build a man-made island. Get rid of garbage, save some cargo, save some lives. More importantly, the cargo, I'm guessing. Sailor lives back then were probably pretty cheap compared to cargo.
Guess. They're like, well, we have this, quick, what do we save? The cargo or the sailors? I think we know the answer to that question.
I think we got tons of sailors back home. We only have so many tons of coffee.
I mean, and if not sailors, we have drunk people we use,
right.
With a hijack.
Shanghai them.
Shanghai
them. We can Shanghai all the sailors we want.
Because you can't Shanghai cargo. I mean, I guess you could, but that's something else.
Yeah, that'd be a pirating thing, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. You Shanghai people and you pirate cargo. So this island would go from being a tiny little rock in the middle of the waterways to a roughly 25-acre-sized island just made out of trash and garbage and stuff. It was big enough that various factories and other industries started popping up all over the island, including at one point it had a powder factory that would blow up in 1875 and kill 4 people. Good times. This island may have been cursed right off the bat. The island will actually be eventually known as Black Tom Island due to, quote-unquote, the large number of dark-skinned fishermen that inhabited the area. So I want you to make of that what you will.
Here I was thinking it wasn't going to be racist.
No.
What a fool
racist.
I was.
Yes.
Still you passed me from 30 seconds ago.
You're like, maybe there was like some black elm trees on the island or something. That's why they called it Black Tom Island. Nope.
Yeah.
Racism. Good old-fashioned late 1800s racism.
Well, to be fair, though, for good old-fashioned 1800s racism, this is pretty mild. So.
Actually, you're 100% correct. They could have called it much worse things. Much worse.
Oh, yeah. Let your imagination go wild. But exactly. Think of the worst thing, it's probably that.
Yep. Black Tom Island was the nicest term they could use in schools from then on.
Right.
So 1905 rolls around, and this island is now big enough, and there's enough industry happening on it that the Lehigh Valley Railroad decided to make it worth their while to take a bunch more garbage and connect that little island to the mainland, so they can put shipping or train stations out there and make it a big shipping hub for themselves. This way, it's a nice transfer yard. It's conveniently located, kind of in the middle of the water, oddly enough.
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because it's only like maybe half a mile off a shore, or maybe a mile off a shore. It's kind of weird how it's set up because it's just like right in the middle of this waterway between Jersey and New York.
Well, you say, in terms of like actual distance, yeah, only half a mile or a mile is fine. But if you think about it, like that's a ways away. Like,
it is. Yeah, it kind of is. It sort of is out in the middle of nowhere, and because of that reason, they decided that hey, this would be a good place for companies to store all their munitions and stuff. Explosives and armaments and this and that. And
Uh-oh.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Uh-oh is correct. And this right now at this point, it wasn't necessarily like military stuff. It wasn't like war. It's more like blasting caps and dynamite and other stuff. That they're uh, making the whole Wild West with.
Like it's not like weapons of war.
It's not weapons of war. It's innocent stuff like dynamite and muskets, I guess.
Only highly combustible things that can kill just as much.
Yeah, but that's the way it was supposed to stay. Was just just blasting caps and stuff. No real like weapons of war out there. But then 1914, World War I breaks out, and immediately Black Tom Island becomes a storage center for munitions that are heading from America over to Europe. So at the start of World War I, the United States took a neutrality stance in the war, which you might think be like, hey, that's good. That way we're not, supporting the wrong side or this or that, and, we're staying out of it, right? Nope.
Right.
Because we're neutral, that just meant that even our government was kind of staying out of it. American companies could sell to whatever side they wanted. So immediately all these American companies started just cranking out guns and weapons and ammo and this and that, started selling them to all of these sides of World War I. That's called capitalism right there.
Oh yeah. Who cares who wins? We just here's weapons.
Oh yeah, it was literally if your check clears, we will send you weapons. We don't care. It's happening over there.
Which is kind of like doesn't have much foresight because they're like, look, I know you're selling both sides and go ahead and get when you're getting good, but I mean, you see a world war like it's all of Europe is getting up and like their allies to America. It's like, dude, like there's no way we're not gonna get involved. It's well, but let me take a step back though. Were we still during that time? Were we still like quote unquote isolationist in terms of like world affairs? Because we didn't really start sticking our dick in everything until like now we do. Like we got shit everywhere. But were we at that time? Were we still kind of like minding our own business?
I believe World War I was kind of the thing that pulled us out of isolationism. So yeah, at this beginning point, we were still more or less an isolationist nation.
Okay. Then that I retract what I was talking about a minute ago. That would make. I mean, it's still bad, but I mean that would make sense. There would be no real expectations. We would be then pulled into it. Like we're selling the weapons that are shooting our people.
And over here we're still dealing with all those uppity natives who didn't seem to like being displaced. So we had our own issues. We were busy doing our own innocent little kind things over here. So
right.
Pretty quickly, we were selling enough arms to Europe that by the summer of 1960, approximately 2 million pounds of small arms and artillery ammunition were being stored at the depot in freight cars and barges. This also included 100,000 pounds of TNT sitting on Johnson Barge number 17. A lot of this stuff was actually destined for Russia, the biggest purchaser of arms during the war from us. Russia liked them American weapons. Like I said at the start, we were selling freely to both sides. It's like, hey, whoever's, can get us the money, we'll get you the weapons. But as the war went along and the British Navy started blockading ports all over Europe, it became harder and harder to sell to some nations, Germany being one of them. So Germany was there being like, hey, America's supposed to be neutral, but they seem to only be selling weapons to, France and Britain and Russia, our enemies. So when they would ask America, America would just kind of shrug and be like, hey, those blockades, what you gonna do, huh? Germany didn't really like that answer, and they were just like, you could get us those arms if you wanted to. We think you're kind of playing favorites, even though you're acting like, you're being neutral. We don't like how this is. So they basically took us selling weapons to the Russians as an act of war on their part. And they thus decided that America was the enemy. Now, it seems like they didn't really like out and out announce that, hey, we're going after America. So they decided more of, they were going to go with the terrorism route and see if they could dissuade America from selling arms by just blowing up stuff around the North America if they could. So terrorist attacks from Germany now begin. First up was up in Canada. They actually bombed water supplies in Toronto to try to get Canada out of the war. That apparently didn't work. Up here in Washington State, in Elliott Bay, they actually blew up a ship to be like, hey, we got our eyes on you, which I don't... apparently that didn't work either because we just kept selling weapons to them. And oddly enough, I never even knew that we had Germans blow up a ship in Elliott Bay up here, and I've lived up here my entire life. Yeah, I no idea. 2 German spy attacks in North America back then.
And it's not like we're... especially for around that time, it's not like we're all like, oh, let's not talk about the Germans and what the bad things they did.
Right.
So you'd think they'd be a little more like, they terrorized us.
Yep. Yeah, they kind of were. It's just sort of been forgotten to time. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the upcoming moments. So those two small attacks, blowing up the water plant, the water supply in Toronto and the ship in Elliott Bay, those weren't exactly big. Their third attack, though, that would be very big, and that would be known as the Black Tom Island Incident. Ba-na-na-na-na. This happened on July 30th, 1916. So shortly, like around midnight, shortly after midnight, a man who worked on Black Tom Island, a man named Michael Kristoff, he accepted $500 from German spies to get them around security and act as lookout while they committed acts of espionage on the island, or acts of sabotage, I should say. Just so you know, $500 was worth about $15K in today's money. So, will that $500 be worth it for this man? We'll find out shortly.
Well, seeing how you know his name, it doesn't sound like things went well for him. Just the fact that like he has a known name and we know how much they paid
this
him.
is very true. If I called him like the mask or the unknown millionaire, then we'd be like, "Ooh, that guy got away with it."
Or we don't know how they got in there. That's his happy ending.
That is happy. He's just like off at a beach in Cuba or something, fanning himself and sipping pina coladas. So anyways, a small explosion and a small fire at the train depot would soon break out, set by those saboteurs. And as we said, there was a lot of explosives on this island. So if there was actually a fire crew, stationed on the island, a little like emergency fire crew, ambulance kind of crew thing. Well, the small explosion at the start woke up that emergency crew and they leapt into action. Well, actually, half of the crew leapt into action. Apparently, like the fire crew showed up and half of them were like, "We're going to stop this before it gets worse." And the other half was like, "Oh, we're out. Bye." So,
yeah, peace out. We're done.
Half of them were like, "Yeah, this is past the point of containment. We're getting out of here." Would the people that stay behind succeed? No. Yeah. 208. Yeah.
We're like you got the people who are like, if I could put out with a garden hose, I'm staying. If anything bigger than that, I'm not going to be here. And then you've got the people who are like, run into danger. Let's save things.
Yes, exactly. Some of those people are far braver than me. Because, I would have been time. I would have looked at him like, nah, I'm going to take this time to get what's known as a head start.
Yeah, I'd like to think, like, if there was people in danger, I might do something like that. But if there was just, like, property, I'm like, yeah, you have to write me up. Because I at least I'll be alive to get the write up. Because otherwise,
insurance can handle this somewhere in the future, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So at 2:08 a.m., the second and the biggest of the explosions would go off. It's estimated this explosion was between 5.0 and 5.5 on the Richter scale and sent shrapnel and debris flying for miles. Just so you know, 5.5 on the Richter scale would make it 30 times more powerful than the World Trade Center's going down. That's how big of a force is going on here. The explosion created a detonation wave that traveled at 24,000 feet per second with enough force to lift firefighters up and out of their boots and into the air, throwing them, against walls through the air, injuring many of them, killing some. Thousands of wind.
It's always a sign of a big explosion or like something big and impactful when people get flung out of their shoes.
Yeah, right.
They're like, oh. Yeah, nothing but their shoes are left behind. They flew. It was like, it must have been real bad.
Yeah, just some smoldering shoes just sitting there in the same place that they were. Scorched body, 25 feet away.
Right. So, I love, like, dude, look at that scorched body. Like, fuck that scorched body. Look, his shoes are right here.
Those are still in pretty good condition. Shoes are expensive back in these days, so let's take them. Thousands of windows broke nearly instantly in Manhattan, with windows also being broken as far as 25 miles away due to the shock waves. The blast was even felt strongly in Philadelphia, about 90 miles away, and people even reported being woken up by it in Maryland, thinking it was an earthquake, and that was about 200 miles away. So up to 200 miles away, people were like, was that an earthquake I heard of yonder?
Because, I'm assuming Maryland doesn't get many earthquakes, or any, really. So I guess they wouldn't know, they wouldn't understand, like, oh, this is a quick explosion, or like, oh, this is actually.
Well, also at this time too, there was lots of immigrants, so they probably came from lands with the because this was like when Ellis Island was at their hoppinest kind of thing, and
gotcha.
Probably a lot of people showing up from earthquake-ridden lands, like California, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, what places are riddled with earthquakes? America. All right, well,
like they came to America, sir. Like, shut up. How about that?
They just went all the way around the globe and immigrated to the East Coast, the long way. The famed St. Patrick's Parish in New Jersey had some of its famous stained glass destroyed in the blast, which is pretty sad because this was like one of the most famous churches in America at the time with like some old ancient stained glass and, big history in it. And that whole thing was just completely destroyed. The church has actually since appeared in The Sopranos. Neat.
Always bothers me. I always hate it when art basically, but stained glass specifically because it's such it wasn't Leonardo da Vinci. I almost said DiCaprio. Leonardo da Vinci. He painted. I mean, it took a lot of talent and all this stuff, and he painted, and I'm sure it took a while, but. Stained glass is not only do you need to know the image you're going for, but then you also need to first of all make the glass into the color you need, in the shape you need, and then put it in a puzzle So I don't know. When I hear stained glass gets destroyed, that always bums me out.
The reason stained glass is so expensive because it does take a lot of work and effort to make, a lot of foresight and.
Whoop. Yeah, it's the foresight is kind of like one of my Achilles heel. It's I'll get in front of a canvas, okay, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
Going together the way it should randomly.
Yeah.
New Jersey City Hall sustained significant damage from this. Flying debris hit and damaged the Statue of Liberty, including severe damage to the Arm and Torch area. So apparently the shockwave from the blast was big enough, it literally moved the entire arm over to where it contacted the head a little bit. That's how much the actual whole statue flexed. This actually caused enough structural damage to the statue that they have since closed off the torch area. That's actually what kind of led to this whole research thing, because there's a lot of conspiracy theories because they don't let you go into the torch of the Statue of Liberty. Ooh, what could be up there?
I didn't realize that. I guess I didn't really take. Let me reverse a little bit. I do remember you mentioning something about it on a prior podcast, or maybe we were talking about about that, about how you can't go up in the torch. But I guess I didn't realize it was this. Then again, I haven't heard of this, so it's not a surprise I didn't realize because I didn't know what this was. But
apparently, most people don't know about this. And if you look up why you can't go up into the Statue of Liberty arm, there's all sorts of crazy stuff like alien technology up there and research labs and this and that. But also, you'll see people talk about how you go up into the torch and it's this just huge area where you can wander around. But no, actually, if you see pictures of it, it's a tiny, thin little stairwell that goes up to a supply closet sized thing, and that's what's up in the torch.
Yeah, I've never seen it, but I've heard the Statue of Liberty isn't as big as.
Yeah. You look at it and you're like, oh my god, that thing's massive. You could run around it, but I guess it's big enough that a line of people can kind of go up there single file, and that's about it.
But it's especially when you're not there, you see in pictures, it's a little bit deceptive. One thing that springs to mind, and Jenny and I was pointed out, when you look at the pictures of the Seattle and the Space Needle, because. If you're looking, particularly one of the famous ones is Frasier, the TV show.
Where it looks like the Space Needle's dominating the skyline and one of the biggest buildings. And
most pictures you see of Seattle, it looks like not only is the Space Needle the biggest thing around, but it's also mixed in amongst all the tall buildings. And you're like, no, it's way the fuck over there.
Yeah,
the bigger buildings are way the hell over there. And in the end, yeah, it's big, but it's not that big. I mean,
it's really not.
If it was with all the buildings that were taller, you wouldn't be able to see it because the buildings would be taller than it is.
Yeah, so, compared to the buildings around it, it's pretty small for the most part.
Yeah, so it's it looks real impressive on Frasier, but in reality, it is. No, it's not nothing. You go there, it is.
Well, it was built back in 1963 or whatever, it was actually one of the taller buildings in Seattle. It's just skyscrapers have gotten so much bigger since then.
Yeah, so it's not what was once impressive is no longer impressive.
Yeah, because in Seattle, I think it's called the Smith Tower or something. At one point, it was the tallest building west of the Mississippi in all of America or in the world or whatever. And if you look at it now, it's still there, and it is it's in the smaller third of all the buildings around. It is literally dwarfed by everything around it. And it's also kind of weird how they made it the tallest building in the world, because you can tell they sort of fudged it a little bit, because it looks like a normal building, and then at the very top there's this little spire that they built that goes up another 4 or 5 stories.
I hate that.
You look at it, you look at it, you're just the only reason this is the tallest is because they built that little addition. Somebody's like, oh, you're about 30 feet away from being the tallest building. And they're like, oh, well, let's add another 40 feet to it.
Look,
at least that's what always came across to me.
If a woman comes in and she stands at 4 foot tall, but she has a beehive on her head, it's an additional 2 feet. She is not now 6 feet tall. She's still 4 foot tall.
One thing I think that throws off people's perspective of the Statue of Liberty, too, is also Ghostbusters 2, where they're riding around the Statue of Liberty.
I was just thinking about that. I was literally just thinking about when you were talking about how you couldn't get up in the in the thing, the first thing that popped in my head was Ghostbusters 2.
Yep. Go there, they're spraying slime all over the thing. Like, we're going to make this statue walk.
In fact, I was going to ask you, but we were talking about the size. Like, is that accurate with the size of the Statue of Liberty with Ghostbusters 2? But I didn't get around asking.
Actually, if you go under our text channels on Discord and click under the general tab, I sent you a picture of like the ladder that takes you up to the torch and how tiny it is, and also what it's like inside the skull or inside the crown. So, is it big enough? Yeah, it's probably big enough. I don't know. I mean, it's literally big enough for like 3 Ghostbusters to stand in there, and that's about it.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, it's big enough for like one single file line kind of make it through there comfortably.
So that was plausible, but yeah, like again, the thing that people really think about, because even I thought the torch, in my head that thing is massive. In my head, the Statue of Liberty can like pole dance in the Sears Tower. Like that's how big it is in my head. But as we've talked about, it's not.
Yep. Yeah, I'm like looking at a picture of the torch, and it's not a whole lot bigger than a human, to be honest. Like, you can see people like standing next to it working on it. It's like, it's not that big. But yeah, if you go online and you can look it up, and all sorts of people claim that they've been up in the torch of the Statue of Liberty, or my grandpa snuck me back up there in the 80s, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently they're all lying. They're all dirty liars.
Dirty liars.
Yeah, I know. I was very disillusioned when I just realized that people would go on the internet and lie for no real reason. Liars on the internet everywhere. Also, in our little Discord chat, you can also see the aftermath of the explosion, the very last picture I sent there. Yeah, everything's kind of just turned into a fine dust on that island.
Yeah, man, there is not much on that island.
Yeah, I mean, you can see some like train wheels and stuff that were like too solid to get blown up. But yeah, it's that whole island just kind of went poof.
Which also, strangely, took care of their garbage problem.
Yeah, yes, actually it did. So it was approximately $100,000 worth of damage was done to the Statue of Liberty, and that's pretty significant. It's about $3 million, $100,000 in then today's money.
For some
which
reason,
is about
like,
$3 million in today's money.
I only picked up dollars. I'm like, okay, wait, time out. What?
You're like, wait a minute. Dollars is modern day money. Back then they used shekels. What's going on, Sean? Immigrants in nearby Ellis Island had to be evacuated temporarily into Manhattan because not only flying debris and damages and stuff, and also people were wondering if these were like attacks that are going to go on. If hey, did we just get bombed or whatever? Well, I guess there really wasn't a ton of bombs back then because planes were kind of new, but artillery shells and stuff existed. And who knows? Maybe we were getting artilleried from the shore or something.
Yeah,
people were in a bit of a panic during all this going on because all of a sudden, just an island's exploding next to you.
I mean, especially since they're talking about like even though we might not be involved, people do know there's a war going on, and suddenly there's a huge explosion. That'd be like, I don't know. I'd be like,
Yeah, and then the old drunk uncles in the corner be like, I told you it would happen. You all said I was a liar, but I told you. It's them French. Nearby Fort Wood, at the main entrance, a 4-inch thick iron door was actually knocked off of its hinges from that blast too. Like the whole door got like knocked off its hinges and like pushed forwards into the fort. So that was pretty impressive too. Following that giant explosion, several smaller explosions rocked the area for several hours, even days too, like unexploded munitions that would just randomly go off, or a stick of dynamite that just eventually got hot enough to blow up. So it was pretty dangerous around that area for a good long while afterwards too. Just wandering around, taking inventory of stuff, and all of a sudden, explosion happens underneath you.
You wonder, even like today, also not know, we're like,
Yeah, just stuff that has we call this a 100-year dynamite. If it gets disturbed, it won't blow up for 100 years. 100 years later, 2016.
Boom. Yeah. Ellie, no. I've been trying to find like someone posting a side-by-side image of the Statue of Liberty from Ghostbusters to the reality statue. Nobody. There's not a single image that has like them side by side.
Probably everybody was just like, that's a stupid thing to do. Who would ever think that they would want that?
But I mean, the only thing I saw was talking about Cloverfield. Remember Cloverfield? Even if you haven't seen the movie, the trailer.
I do know of it, yeah.
Yeah, the Statue of Liberty's head got tossed and is like, oh my God. And I do remember in that movie, they had to make it way bigger because otherwise, when they did the actual size, it was very unimpressive.
Yeah, it was like the size of a small bus kind of thing.
Yeah,
just like,
right.
Oh, that's not much. But yeah, if you have something that's like the size of a building, just like rolling down Main Street, that's
it wasn't quite that big, but it was actually like big and intimidating. And they're like, yeah, no, if it was real, it'd be yeah.
So hundreds of injuries were reported. And only 7 fatalities were reported by the papers, actually, which doesn't seem that big. But also, as people will point out, there was a lot of hobos and Black Tom fishermen around the island that nobody really cared if they got blown up. So
Yeah,
the actual fatalities was probably significantly higher than 7.
once again, talk about that time period. It's like reported. The big
Yeah,
quotations are
right.
reported.
Yeah, it was like 7 white Christian men were killed and others.
Amongst others.
Yeah, amongst others, amongst those people. But yeah, like the 7 fatalities were the barge captain, New Jersey Police Department officer James F. Doherty, Lehigh Valley Railroad Chief of Police Joseph Layden, and also the sad fatality of this all, a 10-week-old infant named Arthur Tossin was thrown from his crib a mile away from the blast, and the force was enough to kill him. Or so the parents say. I mean, like seconds before that happened, they might have just like spiked the baby like a football. And...
Yeah. He's like, oh, I hate this fucking baby.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, he's a huge explosion.
Here's my opportunity. Ha ha.
Is this my baby or the neighbors?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is a possibility.
They go, the paper's like, I hear your baby died. I'm like, yes. Blonde hair, blue eyes. Well, I'm the front page.
Yep, exactly. So, yeah, well, in the end, just that in one night, 6 piers, 13 warehouses, and dozens of rail cars just simply vanished. In their place was a 300 by a 150-foot crater filled with contaminated water and debris. Because, when you got a bunch of explosives exploding, that does leave some toxic waste behind.
Yeah.
All them blasting residue and nitroglycerin and this and that. Not good times. The overall property damage from all this was assessed at $20 million, or $560 million in today's money. News of the blast reaches President Woodrow Wilson, and he makes he remarks of the incident as, quote unquote, a regrettable incident at a private railway terminal, which is
wow,
a really clever way of being
ass.
like, yep, real clever way of being like, this isn't a government thing. All those explosives, that's a private sector. They can deal with that.
Wow, that was so naked. Just like, oh, this sucks. This happened on private land.
Yeah, exactly. This sucky for that railroad company. Thankfully, we are the American government. This has nothing to do with us. As they just walk away.
I mean, couldn't even just leave it for like later or implied. Like, oh, this is a terrible tragedy. Mr. Wilson, what do you think about who's responsible for this? Oh, well, you see, it happened on private land, so we had to do it.
Yep.
It didn't have to be part of the main statement.
Yep. However, he did, because it was during wars were going on across the seas, they decided to send out Edgar E. Clark of the Interstate Commerce Commission to investigate and see what actually happened at this explosion. And investigation went abound, and one thing they learned is, that giant barge that was just covered in TNT, like 100,000 pounds of TNT on it?
Yep.
That exploded? Well, apparently, that barge was supposed to have left several days before, but the thing was, the waters were very uncertain and unsafe around there, so in order to leave, they would have had to have paid a $25 towing charge to have, like, towboats tow them out to the open sea so it's safer. But they didn't want to spend that $25, so they're just like, we'll just sit at the port for a while and wait it out.
Like, what's the worst that could happen? And his friends
exactly.
all look at him.
Well, I mean, the captain of that barge did die, so I guess paid for it with his own life.
Yeah, very true.
Cheap ass.
Of course, you never know. Like, back in these days, I mean, if people just disappeared, they're like, leave for milk and never come back. They're like, oh man, I hate my job, I hate my wife, I hate my kids. Oh. A giant explosion. I guess I'm gonna move across country now. And that's it. No one ever knows.
Hell, back then you didn't even have to move cross country. You could move like 2 towns over, 5 miles away.
Very true.
Very
true. Like 25 years later, like when they stop, like they're traveling through the country and they stop by a store and like, Frank? Like, yeah.
Yeah, it was not hard to disappear back then. Those days.
Those are the days. I mean,
right? I know. It's probably like the freedom of being able just to abandon everything you have and just never come back.
I have no intention of like doing that, but man, you can imagine just like, we're all this debt just crushing us. You know what? Let's just go. Like, let's just go.
Gonna go live on a beach somewhere in the middle, or in Central America, and just see what happens.
Yeah, no, like. Not even Central America. Like, hey, let's move like one state over and then let's start fresh. Like, I went from Townsend to, I don't know, my name is Thomas Google.
Yep.
So,
And just nail a note on your door as you leave. Died from the plague. And then
yeah.
nobody will question it and just be like, well, he's dead. I guess we'll just rent out his apartment now. So when it actually came to what caused the blast, the investigators first thought it was going to be smudge pots were behind the whole thing, because apparently smudge pots is an old school, just like a giant oil burning furnace that you could use for like heat or to get rid of like mosquitoes or other various bugs. And shortly before the fire happened, a bunch of smudge pots got lit up because they're having bad mosquito problems that night. So at first everybody was like, oh, well, that's what it is. Good job, everybody. We're all done. Yay. And they almost like sealed up the investigation on that, just like right off the bat, just like, well, smudge pots. People weren't careful. That's what blew up the whole smudge pot thing. But then they're just like, hey, those Germans started attacking us in other parts of the country. Let's investigate a little bit further. Maybe we should, figure out if this has to do with that war over yonder. So the government decided, hey, let's go assign the fledgling Bureau of Investigation to this case. They can figure it out. There are, top dogs. The only problem is they were really small at the time, only 260 agents at the time. But because of this and other things, this group would eventually grow up to become the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or the FBI. So investigating this is kind of what started the FBI up for America. Yay?
Yay, right? Yeah,
Yay?
exactly. Yay. I mean,
President Wilson al-
the only thing I think of is like if the FBI didn't do all that heinous shit the FBI did, then another, be like we'd be talking about, I don't know, the
International Bureau of Investigation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
International Bureau of Dickheads or something.
Yeah, exactly. They would have done the exact same thing. Yeah, FBI, you're not so important. If you didn't do all this heinous stuff, somebody else would have. Think you're so cool.
Right. You think you're so original.
Well, since the precursor to the FBI was so understaffed, President Woodrow Wilson also sent in the Secret Service to help them out. And also they teamed up with the New York Bomb Squad, and they all joined to form an an investigating supergroup that all the kids thought was cool. Comic books and mass merchandising spree was to follow. The investigation crew. Da-da-da.
You know what's so stupid? So stupid for a heartbeat. Just a heartbeat. And it's so stupid. I thought you were going to say New York Jets. Like, fucking Scooby-Doo. Like, come on, Scooby and the New York Jets. Let's go figure out why this happened. Why is this huge explosion?
Oh, look, it's Joe Namath to help us out. Joe Namath! Hi, kids. Want to watch me throw a football?
Kelly G, Joe Namath.
Yeah.
What's all this powder burns? We found a small infant. Is it white? No. Then who cares?
Who cares? Ha ha. That's pretty accurate for the time.
Right.
So after a year of investigating in 1917, they finally get their big break, and they find out about that Michael Kristoff guy and the $500 the German spies gave him. So they swoop in and they pick him up and they start interrogating him. And in the middle of all this interrogation, just like in a Law and Order episode, somebody busts in and goes like, hey man, you guys messed up all this paperwork. You got to let him go until you get all this paperwork sorted out. So they let him go, run into the courts, get their paperwork all squared away, go back to arrest the dude, and surprise, surprise, he's gone, nowhere to be found.
You think? He just got
Right?
you got a shit ton of money and as we were just talking about, one town over.
Yep, exactly.
Let's go. Fuck this, let's go.
Yep. Yeah, as soon as they let him go, that man just hopped on a bus and he just did not look back.
Oh yeah, the moment he walked out the door, Yakety Sax kicks in, he sped walked to his house, started packing shit up, and ran out the door.
That money probably didn't last him too long, because eventually it did turn out that they caught up with him in various other prisons he was getting in and out of over the years from other stuff that he did.
Oh, so, okay. What an idiot.
Yeah, apparently he wasn't a great guy, because he fled from the police and immediately went back into prison for other stuff, I guess.
You've got a bunch of money like that, and especially from back then, lay low.
Yeah.
You go, you find a nice little place, and you settle down. Unless he was just in it for I don't know, the love of the game. He's like, I know I've got all this money here, but
it did only translate to $15,000 after.
Oh, real? Okay. Yeah. You know.
Yeah,
what?
I mean
okay.
It's $500 back then, which is 15,000 when.
For some reason, I guess in my head, you did say that. In my head, as I was talking just now, I translate 15,000 back then, not thinking about what's this
Gotcha.
now.
You're thinking he's running around like a couple $100,000.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, he ran away. Great, I could totally see why.
Yeah, he probably ran away and drank all that money away in a sitting or something like that.
Yeah, it was one night he decided to go and just go whoring, and he's wakes up the next day. He's like, well, there that went.
And during that whoring time, he probably caught something bad because he died of tuberculosis in 1928 while in prison. That's got to be a bummer of a way to go, in prison with tuberculosis, because you're not getting great medical treatment there
Oh
back in
no.
1928.
If any,
Yeah,
your treatment was stay in this room. There you go.
yeah. They probably just pull you aside and just have like some twisted-looking German doctor, do quote-unquote procedures on you.
All
This
right,
is Herman
procedures.
Goering. He's going to find out what's wrong with you, sir. Is he going to fix me? No, 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 no. He's just going to find out what's wrong with you. As far as the actual German saboteurs who did the explosion and the whole setup thing, one of them was actually caught in the Mexican border in 1980 trying to escape America, or, just trying to escape while the heat died down.
1980.
In 1918.
Oh, okay, I was like 1980. It's like Jesus Christ, how do they even know he was like?
That would be amazing.
We had this old ass motherfucker crossing the bridge. He's German. And clearly, he had something to do with the bombing.
You're at the Mexican border in 1980, and there's like this 95-year-old dude just like mean mugging this other like 95-year-old dude. I think I know you from somewhere. Black Tom Island, you blew it up.
World War One and Two, and Vietnam, and the Korean War, and
Yeah.
all those shits passed by.
Even better too is the German spy sneaking. He's got like the old school German pointy hat from World War One.
That's with that like spike on top.
Yep, exactly. Like, were you from World War One? 9. Good times.
Yeah, it's good times. So, well, I mean, I don't even know how they would like link it unless he had stuff that, because yeah, it was 1918, I guess, but like it was the Mexican border. It's not.
They didn't
pretty
say
far
how
away
they
from
caught
the
him, because it's not like they had a fax machine back then. They just faxed the picture down to him or something. I mean, so yeah, not exactly sure how they caught him.
Unless he was like, "Oh, sir, you have anything to declare? I bombed Black Tom Island." Jesus, I was asking if any apples or anything, but okay.
Hey, German dude, why are you wearing this shirt that says "I blew up Black Tom Island" and all I got was this lousy T-shirt?
with a like a picture of him with 2 thumbs.
Who blew up Black Tom Island? This guy.
The front of the shirt's him like front of the shirt's 2 thumbs. The bomb's like about to explode. The back of the shirt's the explosion.
Ask me about what I was doing on Black Tom Island 2 years ago.
I like how you used 2 years ago, because then going forward for the rest of it, he wore this shirt 20 years later. Guess what I was doing at Black Tom Island 2 years ago?
Originally, I was going to update the shirt every year, but it turned out to be very expensive.
Right.
Custom printing presses weren't a thing back then.
I only did it like 3 times, then I realized it was too much.
Right. Now I just take a Sharpie and I just draw a 1 in front of whatever number's there.
He's got his shirt's covered in Sharpie.
So the other German spy that we know of that night, he actually managed to escape capture and kind of went around doing spy stuff all throughout World War II until the Russians captured him and killed him. So that probably wasn't fun either. I can't picture being captured as a spy by Russians turning out to be a good thing.
Yeah, I don't think the Russians they're not exactly known for
hospitality.
Hospitality and light touch.
Yeah.
Oh, this guy is he's got information we want, so let's just we'll talk sternly to him. I'll count to 3 very, very angrily.
Yeah, it was like World War I. Back in those days, they just stuck you in a room with a horny Rasputin and let him have his way with you.
Right.
Yeah.
With this giant horse dick.
Yep. Just like Sid in the song.
There is
like the.
Oh, it was like nothing. Go ahead. I didn't know where I was going with it.
Well, I was gonna say I love. There's this one meme where it's like that song "Rasputin" by Boney M.
Yeah.
Rasputin's grandchildren were alive when that song came out, so they're
really?
just mind your own business, and all of a sudden a song about how good your granddad fucks comes on the radio. It's like, Grandpa?
I mean, but let's be real. Of all the things people said about your grandfather, that was probably like on the happy end.
Yeah, honestly, that is kind of like one of the nicer things they could have said about him on things. Could have gone a lot worse, I guess.
I assume there's still relatives around, right? I mean, or did they do what the Hitler family did? Or like, we're gonna end our bloodline.
Yeah, I don't really know. Speaking of Russians, though, one side effect from all this happening was Russia was not happy about that explosion because that was all mostly their arms and shipments that were on that island waiting to come over to them. So they were not exactly happy with the Lehigh Valley Railroad Company, and they decided to sue the pants off them for gross negligence, as you tend to do. But in a fun moment of lawyering, the lawsuit take place right after that Bolshevik revolution. So the government of Russia changed hands, and the railroad company was like, "Hey, man, that contract we signed was for the previous government, not with this one that just came because of revolution. So we should be off the hook. I mean,
It sounds very lawyerly, and of course,
it sounds very
worked.
lawyerly to be like, yeah, well, I mean, we didn't sign it with this king.
Right.
Yeah, that would be kind of like being like, hey, we signed this with the last president, not with the current one. But the courts did not agree with that.
Oh, okay.
In fact, yeah, the courts did not agree. In fact, it almost kind of backfired on the railroad company because I guess the former remnants of the old government were still kind of hanging around in some way or another. So with the method that the railroad company tried, there was a chance they opened themselves to get sued by both governments, the previous one and the older one, or the previous one, the current one. Yeah. So they kind of had to like do some last minute apologizing to the courts and be like, no, we didn't mean that. We weren't trying this. Please don't sue us twice.
I was drunk. It's Russia.
Yeah. As a fellow Russian, you know what it's like being drunk around the clock. So
I'm drunk right now.
It is the Russian way of things. So the cost of all that exploded munitions and property damage was valued at $50 million. And that's basically what I think the Russians got awarded with, somewhere around $50 million too. And all this basically got lumped into that giant $33 billion of post-World War I reparations that Germany was stuck with. Remember that, Nate? Remember how well that worked out?
Oh, yeah, it worked out beautifully.
Yeah,
Nothing bad happened.
Oh, well, Germany handled it in the best way possible. See, what they actually did is, you know those Capital One cards you get where it's like transfer all your balances to this card and get a low interest rate? Well, they did that. They just got a Capital One card and they transferred all $33 billion to that. And then they made like 2 payments and then they just stopped paying it. They changed their address a couple of times, moved P.O. boxes, and they just waited for the whole thing to get forgotten about. So that's how it worked out.
Sounds like a way to go.
Yeah, it's the American way of avoiding debt. The Germans were pioneers in that. Yes, I am joking about how they did that. Somewhere there's poor people listening to this podcast be like, yes, I know that method.
Right.
Consolidate all your debt to one company and then screw over that company. One more big fallout from this whole thing. One of the investigators from all this, from the island blowing up, was Harvard Law School graduate John McCloy, who had gone on to help create the policy of Japanese internment camps in World War II, using this Black Tom Island as an example of why we need them, saying that, hey, if we don't lock up all these Japanese, we could have ourselves another Black Tom Island incident with terrorisms. And even FDR used Black Tom Island to justify the internment camps, going on actual quota saying as, we don't want another Black Tom Island. So there you go. This was used for racism years on afterwards. And that's pretty much the end of the story.
Yeah, it's just, I always hate the internment camp stuff because, you just, at the same time, there were Germans walking around, but of course,
Oh, that's color difference there.
Yeah, racism, yay.
Yeah, well, you got to do that old Family Guy thing where you whip out that color gradient thing, and below a certain line, it's like not okay. Yeah.
Right.
That's pretty much how it works. Same with the cataloging all the dead people on Black Tom Island. They probably just went around with one of those gradient cards, like those little paint swatches, and just hold it up next to the skin color and be like, it doesn't count. Yep. So did you learn anything fun and exciting from this, Nate?
I did, actually. I mean, we talked about like how the Statue of Liberty was damaged, and obviously like one of the excuses for internment camps, and just it was I don't know, it was very enjoyable.
How easy it was to just disappear back in the day.
Yeah,
it counts for all the dads who went out to go grab a gallon of milk or some cigarettes and never came back.
Right. They come to find out later on they have like 2 more families.
Yeah, exactly.
You weren't even the first family,
right?
You're the second.
Yeah. Why did Daddy leave us? Oh, he went back to his original family. You mean his second family? No, his original family. We were the second family, unfortunately. So, Boink. I should probably stop the recording before I forget. Doink. Because sometimes I wonder what happens if you actually forgot to stop the recording and you just let it keep going.
Right.
This is where the ending jingle goes. This is where the ending jingle goes. I don't know if we need one. I don't know if we'll get one. But if we do, then here is where it goes.